Welcome on to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Transformers Convoy no Nazo, brought to us by Takara. Released very early on in the Famicom's life cycle and only in Japan, Transformers Convoy no Nazo is a game very similar to the original Super Mario Bros. In its style. In the game, instead of playing as Optimus Prime, you're playing as Ultra Magnus, going through 10 various levels, battling Decepticons, and you can even collect hidden letters in order to unlock Rodimus Prime. Though in the course of this run, I'm just going to be focusing on completing the levels normally. So here we go with Transformers for the Famicom. This game is a one-hit death, and you're unable to really get power-ups. One of the reasons why it's so infamous is because of that one-hit death, along with the overall graphic scheme of the game making it difficult to be able to see a lot of the enemies and bullets sometimes. For the first level, we're mostly just going to run straight on the ground, allowing us to run underneath and dodge a large portion of the enemies, only having to jump every so often to get over ground enemies. At the end of the level, we're going to jump over to this right side on this platform here, switch and transform into our truck form, and then fire upwards at this like satellite dish planet floating in the air, which works as the first stage boss. Level 2 is where things start to get a lot more challenging. Use the platforms to your advantage because a lot of the bullets from enemies cannot pass through them, including from these turrets. To help you out though, there are a few letter type upgrades that do help you, including the letter P, which allows you to fire in multiple angles, the B, which is a barrier giving you additional hits, you have the 1, which will give you an extra life, and an F, which allows you to actually fly around the levels for a brief period of time using the A button. Since you're going to have to destroy enemies in order to find a lot of these upgrades, it's actually pretty difficult to get multiple of them in a level before you end up losing a life, as I like to avoid most enemies. Now for the next boss, we're going to get into the lower right corner, transform, and then fire up at the first satellite. Then jump up to this platform and do the same for that second kind of base floating overhead. Taking out the one on the far right first is a lot easier. You'll have less fire as the one in the center has a hard time reaching any of its projectiles over to that side. Now for stage 3 is one of the first kind of vertical type of levels. You'll have a couple of these in the game. This one we're going to be working our way upwards. There is a ton of turrets and other enemies, and they're really difficult to kind of sometimes see, because as you jump, they'll then just kind of appear on screen and immediately usually start firing at you. Your first kind of times through these levels, you're going to really want to go slowly as you progress upwards. At the very top, you'll make it to the next boss, located right here. You can see the giant logo, and you'll have to hit the flashing upside-down triangle in its forehead. Stay on the far right platform in order to easily dodge the projectile that it fires out. As you can see, it kind of goes in a wave-like pattern, going with a big loop at the bottom first. Usually, unless the platform you're on is already at the very bottom as well, you can pretty much avoid these pretty easily. Once you deliver enough hits, though, it will flash and you move on to stage number 4. Even with the power-ups, the game is no cakewalk just due to that one-hit death. Even if you're able to get barriers, it's a lot of times hard to dodge a lot of the enemy fires and just overall enemies scattered throughout each stage. There is thankfully a continue though. If you get a game over at any point, you can hold A, B, and start and then release it once the music ends at the end of the game over screen in order to continue and pick up where you left off. If not, you'll have to restart. As you've probably noticed with the life screen at the beginning of a stage and all, it's very similar to Mario in that sense. In this stage, you can see that you're in such tight confinements, it can be very difficult. With the kind of wave-like moving enemies, sometimes it's best for them to kind of like pass you by, judging where they're going to end up making their kind of cycle past you so that you can end up getting away. Now, for the next boss is another one where we're going to have these small little moving up and down platforms, and to hit the boss you can see another kind of triangle underneath of it. This time I'm going to stay on the second platform, the middle one, as I have to dodge a lot more fire from this particular boss, trying to jump up and down, avoiding the fire, usually one shot up and then one shot down, depending upon how much I've been jumping. No matter how many times I play the game, I still end up finding myself getting caught by the random stray enemy. For example, there was a volcano-like presence in the background that fired out one of those fireballs and ended up hitting me. As you can see, that since it's really difficult to hit a large portion of enemies, I kind of fire like pot shots out trying to hope I hit something. but a large amount of time I end up just completely missing. If you end up collecting the letter D, which I ended up grabbing there, it actually gets rid of all your upgrades, so you always have to be careful. The problem is sometimes when I end up seeing one of these letters, I end up grabbing it because it looks like the letter B, but it ends up being the letter D. Now here with this one, the F1 allows me to fly over the rest of the stage easily. I can just kind of hover over everything. For the next boss, you have the giant robot that's going to fire a straight out laser from its gun. Thankfully, this is actually easier to dodge, I feel, than the last boss, and you're going to be aiming, of course, at the flashing triangle on the forehead this time around as you're moving up and down. I do recommend staying on the middle platform. You'll have enough distance to still hit the boss, but be able to quickly jump out of the way of the laser in case he ends up firing directly your way. Now, for the next stage, it's very similar to the one we did earlier, except now we're descending in the level. It's actually the same exact setup as the one from before. The biggest problem I run into, though, is if I try to go off an edge of a platform too quickly, and there's a turret on that edge, I end up running into it when dropping off, so very cautiously you have to make each and every descent. For the boss, this is another one of those ones that's just the floating logo here as we're moving up and down. Stay on the middle platform. When his projectiles see you, like they are on the same kind of plane as you a lot of times, they'll come directly dashing towards you, so you will have to kind of jump out of the way of them. Staying on that middle or even far end platform will give you plenty of distance to try to jump over those projectiles. Now for the next level, I'm going to change immediately into our truck form, then move across quite a bit of the level. You don't want to go all the way over. I use kind of background cues to kind of help me out before changing out of it so that I can jump over the giant machine that pops out of the ground. My first couple of times through this level, I was like, oh, I'll just turn into the truck, and I ended up running directly into those guys. Since there's only a couple of those guys, staying in the truck form will allow you to kind of speed through a large portion of the level, dodging most enemies from above. For the next boss, he fires directly at you. Stay on the middle platform, moving up and down, firing at his forehead when you get the shot. Sometimes I get really lucky and defeat a boss quickly, and other times I can't seem to just hit that spot that I absolutely need to in order to defeat him. In the next stage, we're going to be descending once again. There's a bunch of the turret kind of things set up on the walls, but I feel like there's a little bit more open gaps for you to fall through, unlike the previous stage, and once again, it's not really that long of a level overall. Here's another boss with direct fire at us. Because it fires sometimes from like the very edge of his logo, you don't have much time. Even if you're on the middle platform, you really don't have a whole lot of time to react a lot of the time. But be prepared, because Stage 9 is by far the worst level in the game. This is a maze-like level, similar to some of the castles in Super Mario Bros., except in this one you have to move such a specific way in order to complete it. Throughout, follow the path that I'm taking. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to have to like move all the way up or all the way back down to the very bottom, but you have to make sure you touch certain platforms in order for it to work. Like, for example, going all the way down here, and then go into truck form to ride underneath of that platform. There are a few like power-ups and secrets spread out throughout this stage, but it's actually easier and won't screw up the whole path if I just focus on that particular weird secret path that it needs you to take. If you end up failing, you're going to have to redo the whole level from the beginning, so usually I just don't go out of my way to kind of find any of the secrets, just focus on getting to the end. The boss for the level is actually Megatron, and instead of him being the final boss of the game, he fires once again directly at you, similar to the last few bosses. Sometimes they'll kind of like lock in and start going straight after they initially fire in at you. Stay at that middle platform and aim towards the forehead, and after only a few shots, we'll move on to the 10th and final stage of the game. In this level, we're now ascending from that previous level that we had just descended from. It's a bit tougher to actually work your way upwards than downwards. I think the turrets have a much better aim at you during the ascending part than the descending part, but overall, if you got kind of the whole thing down from that previous time, it's still a relatively easy level to get through. You don't have to worry about any of its maze-like settings like we had to deal with in Stage 9. The final boss of the game is Trypticon, who has a large projectile that he fires out. It's actually the same basic size as our main character. Moving up and down, like always, in that center middle platform is your best and safest bet in order to have a good chance at dodging the fireballs. After delivering enough hits though, you get the brief ending to Transformers on Famicom. So there you guys go, there is Transformers Convoy no Nazo for the Famicom. If you went through and collected all the letters of Rodimus Prime throughout, which can be a bit annoying to do so, because a lot of times I end up missing enemies that contain the letters, and end up having to die and restart the stage in order to grab them. The only thing you get, though, is a color change to your main character, kind of similar, I guess, once again to Mario. Mario and Luigi's color palette change, as they play identical to one another, so honestly, it's not really worth doing. But with that, guys, that will wrap up this episode of Play It Through. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a thumbs up or commenting down below. Now if you enjoyed this, check out a really fun early Famicom puzzle game that I did last week by Naryland. You play as two penguins, and you actually have to control both characters at the same time. It's actually a really cool game. I also need to thank all the members of my Patreon. You guys are awesome. Your continued support is keeping this channel alive, all the videos, including the live streaming, the Bar Geeks channel, and all that cool stuff. If you'd like to help out as well, you can just click the Patreon button down below. As little as $1 a month and help out. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all your support. And of course, I hope you enjoy.